Greetings VC, Andy here again, and I'm a little belatedly jumping on a thread which was kicked off by Steve at his channel is A is for Alice, B is for Bob, C is for ... and basically the challenge is, does jazz suck? And he kicked it off because he bought a CD compilator, mini box set of a Miles Davis and John Coltrane collaboration, and he didn't like it, so hence set the question. And does jazz suck? Well, you know, like all music, some of it does, but most of it doesn't, and I'm going to run through some albums here. I mean, I've known jazz, you know, ever since whenever. My dad quite liked big band jazz. Didn't have a big record collection, but he played bits. And growing up in my sort of very late teens and early 20s, I quite liked going to pubs to see what we call trad jazz bands, you know, short, small bands playing traditional jazz. But, you know, in more recent years, I didn't really buy any records of jazz then or for some time, but I've sort of really got into it in the last 20 years, I suppose. You know, of all generally sort of more modern jazz, so the classics onwards, and I'm going to whiz through 8 records here, which are incredibly diverse. So my point of these 8 records is to show how diverse jazz as a genre is because of all the sub ones, and I'm looking at some classics and some modern stuff as well. So let's get started, and of course we probably have to start with Miles, don't we? But not necessarily, you know, some of his more famous ones. And the point of this, so this is Porgy and Bess, and this is Miles Davis really arranging for jazz of the late 50s. A 1935 opera, obviously Porgy and Bess by George Gershwin, and this is with orchestra as well. So Gil Evans directed the orchestra, and it's fabulous because obviously Porgy and Bess, we all know the sort of music of it, but it's done with Miles Davis, just magnificent. So and this one I got fairly recently, for not very many years ago, and it's on clear vinyl. And you know, so it's interesting. Steve started this off about a collaboration, and really jazz is writ through with collaborations, and I'm going with one, and ironically it's one which involves John Coltrane, but this one is Thelonious Monk and John Coltrane, which was actually recorded. I'm not sure when it came out. I think it was 58 or 59. I'm not sure, but it was recorded in 1957, and basically Thelonious Monk, obviously pianist primarily, and John Coltrane, sax player, but with a bunch of other ones. They had a relatively short. On the back there's a whole load of stuff about it. So they played basically at New York's 5-Spot Cafe in the summer of 1957, about half a year. So they played together for about 6 months or so. And this pairing is, you know, with in some way unusual, of piano and sax predominantly, plus obviously the supporting stuff. Trumpet, bass, and etc. This is considered to be one of the best collaborations, and it is truly fabulous. And it is another one which is obviously a fairly modern reissue, and it is on a sort of, I don't know what colour they call it. It's sort of like red winey sort of colour. And A is for Alice. And this was Alice Coltrane, and it is a live album, and it's the Carnegie. It's called the Carnegie Hall concert, which took place in February 1971, and is considered, you know, was considered to be one of the greatest jazz concerts of its time. So again, a little bit different here because Alice Coltrane plays harp a lot on it, and the harp is quite unusual. Well, it sounds unusual compared to what I think of in jazz, and she's playing with a consummate bunch of musicians, including the magnificent Pharaoh Sanders on sax and flute and so on, Archie Shepp on tenor sax, soprano, etc. She's got 2 bassists, Jimmy Garrison and Cecil McBee, 2 drums, Tulsi, a tambora playing in there appropriately, and harmonium. And this is largely based around the starting track. It's a double, and there are tracks on each side. And I ought to say that whilst it was recorded in 1971, it wasn't actually released until 24, you know, about last year, I think. Well, if it was 24, it was last year, but in the last couple of years. And it is superb. It's on the Impulse label, which is probably at the moment the sort of big one. I think it's an offshoot of Blue Note, but a fabulous set of albums on Impulse. And the opening track is called Journey to, I've got to look at this because I can't say it otherwise, Sachidananda, he says, mangling it, who was a sort of yogi guru in India who Alice sort of met, and he took under her wing, he took under his wing. She had a lengthy trip to India and swam in the Ganges and all of that stuff. But the whole album is absolutely superb, and there's a nice. It's got a detailed booklet with it, several pages explaining all the background to it, and it's a double album on a black, and there are just 4 tracks on it, 1 on each side, so they're all lengthy. And now I want to show how, you know, what is jazz. Well, there's lots of little side shoots to it, and this album is one of the more famous ones, and I've left it in its wrapper because to show some of this stuff. So this is Herbie Hancock and Headhunters, which came out in 1973, and this is really very different to the stuff we've just talked about. This is jazz funk, so it's really funky jazz. You know, you've got a lot of you've got obviously piano on there. It's just totally different. But brilliant all the same. And this is one I bought not that long ago, a few years ago, and it's an analog production. So it's it's an audiophile pressing from the original master tapes, and so on and so on. It's, you know, obviously well known and famous. And while we're on the subject of sort of offshoots, should we say, we've also need to talk about jazz fusion, don't we? And probably the greatest exponent of it is the Mahavishnu Orchestra, which obviously is John McLaughlin on guitar, but a fabulous band this is. So this is a live recording. It was recorded in Central Park in New York in 1973, I think. And it's got a great lineup of jazz fusion musicians. Jan Hammer on piano and Moog, you know. So we're starting to get sort of you know, electronic instruments coming into play now. Obviously McLaughlin on guitar, Jerry Goodman on violin, you know, famous and fabulous. Rick Laird on bass, and the magnificent Billy Cobham on drums. As a live recording, this is superb. This is actually, unlike most of the other ones, this is actually an original. I picked up at a record fair a few years ago, and it is superb. Single album, just on black vinyl. And now, this is my entry into the branch of jazz which I call what the WTF. And it is by the Beastie Boys. And you're thinking, what? How are the Beastie Boys jazz? Well, this is an instrumental album, so they're not singing, they're not rapping or anything like that. It's the album I think of as where the Beastie Boys scratched their jazz itch, and it's called The In Sound from Way Out, and it was released in 1996. It's actually a French release, so I don't know, you know, it's sort of it's all in all the writing's in French. It's on a French label, and well, I think it's an offshoot of Capital, and it's sort of, they call it Le Son Hip du Monde Hop. So it's not the best jazz album in the world, but it's decent, and actually they play the instruments really well. So you've got Adam Yauch on bass, Mike D on what it says here is battery, which is obviously drums, and Adam Horowitz on guitar electrique, and then they've got some other players with them, and it's acoustic, well, mostly acoustic, obviously electric guitar, and it's actually really, really good, and as I say, where did that one come from? So for the last two, we're jumping continent, because most of the previous ones we've talked about, in fact, I think all of them, they were all from America, and essentially, well, one was a French album, but from American musicians, all pretty well produced in New York. Maybe not all of them, but most of them, which, particularly going back to the 50s and 60s, was really the sort of the driving force of jazz at the time. But things have changed recently. So really in the last certainly the last 10 years, the London jazz scene has really become very cutting edge and very happening. And has produced some absolutely magnificent albums. One of which is from a band called The Comet is Coming. And this is their second album, which came out in 2019, and it's called Trust in the Life Force of the Deep Mystery. And this is, this to me is the jazz form of heavy metal. That's the way I would describe this. This is jazz that you can headbang to. And it's a trio in jazz terms. This is a power trio. It's got the magnificent Shabaka Hutchins on predominantly sax, but on flute and sax and so on. And then it's a really unusual one. And the other two guys go by the name of Danny Logg and Betamax. And one's the drummer basically, but the other plays a whole range of synths, vintage synths and so on. So it's a very different one, and it's really heavy and fast. It's totally different from, even modern jazz. This is uber modern jazz. And another one, because Shabaka is on the Impulse label as well. This one's nice and orange. And we started with Miles Davis, and we've just talked about the London jazz scene, and with my last album I'm pulling those together, and talking about briefly a record and a band which have been called London Brew, and this came out in 2023. I think it was recorded at least a couple of years early, maybe late 2020. It was all sort of COVID time, and basically this is with the permission of the Miles's estate. His nephews look after it, and so they really supported this. You've got really the cutting edge of jazz today, guys getting together and producing a celebration of Miles Davis's classic Bitches Brew album. Now, this is not it's not a cover of it. It's not a rearrangement, a remix, or anything like that. It is a celebration of it. So one of the tracks actually is a play on the name of one of the key tracks on the original Bitches Brew. I can't remember what it is, but this is an official Miles Davis estate approved celebration. So they've been behind it. His nephews, I think, run his estate, and basically they've looked at some of these very modern musicians who have been carrying on, based around London, who have been carrying on the tradition that Miles, should we say, started, and basically they've got together just at the end of the lockdowns. a bunch of them, I don't know, about 10, Shabaka Hutchins, Theon Cross, Tom Skinner, who of course has been recently in playing with the Smile, you know, the Radiohead offshoot, shall we say. And essentially, it's jamming. They've all got in a room. Yes, there's structure to it. So it's not like let's get in a room and make stuff up. You know, they are following a structure to really sort of to celebrate Bitches Brew. But it does have that feel of a magnificent jam session, multi-jam session. And again, there's a whole section in there explaining all about it. And it is a double album, and it's on, well, it's the same as the first one. It's that sort of like red winey colour. So there you go. So we've gone back to, you know, the start of what I might call modern jazz, you know, with Miles Davis, and we've come right through the cycle and picking up, you know, the real uber modern stuff going on in London at the moment. And taking it back to Miles, who kicked it off. So no, jazz doesn't suck, just some of it does. Thanks for watching. Cheers.